Shoot your arrows! Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Woods, touchdown! LA! Ball goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge, and Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride! Wow!
Franklin Myers gets his hand down there.
Weddle got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did!
Racing down the sideline is Akeem Talib. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA!
Picked off by John Johnson.
Well, Dante Fowler, who is able to get to Breeze. Greg Zuerlein sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
All right, welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 285. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me, as always, is Alexis Kraft. We're stopping. Well, we're not going to stop, but we're moving away from the draft season podcast a little bit since we haven't had a true Rams podcast in a minute. So Alexis and I are going to be talking about the Rams offseason today, and we have a lot to talk about, and it's not necessarily going to be all sunshine and roses. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happened. Pretty much, if you listen to our intro, most of the names that JB Long is announcing in the intro are no longer Rams. So, definitely hit home this offseason. But we're going to get into that. Before we do, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, and enjoy the show. But I'll give the floor to you, Alexis. This offseason, we've been saying this for a while, it was going to be transformative in a big way. It's not very often you have a coach that in 2 years' time brings you to a Super Bowl, and then the next year they don't even get to the playoffs, and all of a sudden you blow up your coaching staff, and you have different team responsibilities and moves to make. And it looks like the Rams are really blowing up, not really just the coaching staff, but it looks like they're kind of blowing up their defense. So I want to get your thoughts on what this offseason means for the Rams and what your overall take it has been watching everything go down.
Well, first off, Jake, let me just say it's good to be back because like you said, we haven't done a true Rams podcasts, specifically to the Rams in a while. I think, with everything going on, in the world, it's been a really crazy time. I mean, first off, before the coronavirus, I was extremely sick and couldn't record the podcast because I had no voice. And then, coronavirus has come around and it's been a really crazy time for everybody, and everybody's really unsure and uncertain of what's going on. Every sport that was in session has been canceled. I mean, Major League Baseball has gotten pushed back. I mean, the NFL is the only sport as of now that has not announced a, delayed start of season. So I think it's, really important. I know that everyone's really scared, myself included. There's a lot of uncertainty going on in the world. But, at least for me, and I know for you, one thing that has kind of kept us sane and kept us, engaged is the NFL is approaching and the draft is approaching and the offseason is going on. And it's been really nice to be able to have something to focus on other than the news. Not that you shouldn't watch the news because it's important to be aware of what's going on, but just to have something, that we can talk about and that, we're interested in and we know you guys are interested in, and just to, have that realization that the NFL is coming. That it's coming. We're in the off season. The off season just started. And to circle us back around to the Rams, it wasn't a great start, and it's not looking like it's going to be a great finish. So, I think the big storyline around the Rams off season right now is the lack of anything. It's not necessarily that the Rams have done anything. It's kind of what they haven't done. First off, and Jake, I'll talk to you more about this, or I'll let you expand on this, but the loss of Corey Littleton was kind of the the big question mark around what was going to, at least for me, of this offseason was Dante Fowler and Corey Littleton. And I really was hoping that we could at least keep one of them, because I think we really needed to keep one of them. I didn't think we would be able to keep both of them. But I mean, just starting off with the losses, all of the I mean, we've had so many losses, some good, arguably, but a lot bad this offseason. So I think we should just break it down. Starting off with Corey Littleton, I mean, what was that? What do you think the thought process behind letting him walk was?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question. I think really when you look at it, you could say the money, but he was, to be had for under 12 million, which we were hearing, 14 to 16, and I would have even paid that price tag. But I think it has to be when you let a top 10 player at his position go like that, for somebody that, I mean, he wasn't overpaid. We've seen, I'll say this over and over again, he was not overpaid, because we've seen guys like CJ Mosley get 17 million at the same position. 10 has kind of been the customary thing, and going a little bit above that, maybe closer to 12, wouldn't have been enough of a deal breaker for me. So I think what it comes down to is when they blew up the coaching staff and they added a new defensive coordinator, I think the defensive coordinator is saying he doesn't fit in his scheme. Here is where I'm going to get a little off the train track here. I don't believe in that ideology, because I think it says more about you if you can't fit Corey Littleton in your scheme than it says about Corey Littleton. This is somebody that's versatile. He's one of the best, cover linebackers in the league. He's one of the best tacklers. He can rush the passer. He had over 8 sacks as an inside linebacker. He's a former edge rusher at Washington, so this is somebody that has, multiple experiences in different roles, kind of a chess piece, but then he actually became a focal point of their defense and arguably the third best player on the defense after Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. So what does that tell you? Well, if you didn't have Jalen Ramsey, he'd be your second best player, and that probably means he's the best player on most defenses in the NFL when you really look at it. So to let a guy like that go, I think is just a huge mistake. It could be a grave mistake for, the direction of this defense, forcing 7 turnovers over the last 2 seasons. The only guy on the entire roster that's done that has not been Aaron Donald, but has been John Johnson III. So this is a very talented player, and I think they're definitely making a huge mistake in letting him go.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, the loss of Corey Littleton is only amplified by the loss of everybody else on defense. I mean, losing Corey is obviously a big loss. But then, just to throw the names out, which of course everybody pretty much knows, but I mean, Corey Littleton, Dante Fowler, Nickel Roby-Coleman, Clay Matthews. I'm sure I'm missing somebody from the defense. Michael Brocker's gone. Todd Gurley from the offense, gone. It's just, it was kind of like he was the first to fall in this domino effect of what has been the Rams offseason. I think what it comes down to, Jake, is I think that unfortunately, and you and I have talked about this, and we've certainly talked a lot about Jared Goff, but we're starting to see the effects of that big contract kind of impact other players and the well-being of the team. I mean, Corey Littleton, there's no reason why we shouldn't have been able to pay him what the Raiders ultimately ended up giving him. Dante Fowler is another person that I really, really, really wanted to keep. I think he's I hate to use the word underrated, because underrated and Dante Fowler in the same sentence sounds strange to me, but a lot of people I don't think gave him the credit that he deserved last season. I thought he played phenomenal, and we can get into later our additions in Leonard Floyd and A'Shawn Robinson, but A'Shawn Robinson and Leonard Floyd are not replacing who we lost on our defense. I mean, this defense is going to look very structurally different. I think they're going to have to play a different scheme. I'm not sure what's going on, but I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about our secondary, because we have Jalen Ramsey now, who we have to lock. I mean, we have to pay him. I mean, Jalen Ramsey is going to want to be the highest paid corner in the league. Arguably, he deserves that. We have given up 2 first-round picks for this guy. So if we don't lock down Jalen Ramsey, that's all going to be for nothing. So I can only assume that that's what the Rams' end goal is they're trying to make cap room for Jalen Ramsey. But Jake, what do you think's going on with that? And do you think that he has a supporting cast in the secondary alongside David Long and Troy Hill? Or do you think that in the draft we might need to focus a little bit on that corner position?
Yeah, surprisingly, I look at the secondary, and that is a really talented group, even without Nickel Roby-Coleman coming back. I mean, I think when you look at Jalen Ramsey and Troy Hill, that's a really good duo. I think, a lot of people are used to Troy Hill from his days with the Rams, when Fisher was there and even early on in the McVay era, but this is a new cornerback. This guy has changed. This isn't a take the money and run type of guy. He already got paid and showed his hand. He is a changed cornerback. He is developing before our eyes, had his best season last year, and was arguably 10 times better than the year prior. So I think he's a legit starter in this league. Some people will disagree with me. Going with Jalen Ramsey, I think it's going to help him regardless. And then you look at the not so often used, nickel spot, and I think that's why they didn't bring back Nickel Roby-Coleman, which is kind of odd because, only $4.5 million it's saved for the cap. But, you look at David Long, Darius Williams, Dante Dion, Adonis Alexander. I think they have a decent, I wouldn't say decent, I say they have a really good group at corner, and just maybe not guys that you would know necessarily. I think that's the thing. People get so caught up on the, is this guy a household name? And he doesn't really have to be. I mean, if he's going to be a contributor, it doesn't really matter. Darius Williams is somebody that, the Ravens really liked. He was actually on the 53-man roster, and to make room for a player, they actually ended up cutting him and trying to bring him on the practice squad. The Rams did this similar thing. They took Darius Williams as, a guy that the team was trying to keep. They did the same thing with the Cardinals back with Jeff Fisher when the Cardinals tried to release Marquis Christian and bring him back on the practice squad, and the Rams were really quick to scoop him up. So they've done this in the past, and it has worked out. Marquis Christian actually just went to the Jets. I do think that's a decent loss. But I like that move. I think Darius Williams really turned it on last year in limited opportunities. So I think this secondary is really good. I think they're really just missing, one guy. I don't think that they need him to start or anything like that, just to add some depth. Obviously, they need more because, 90-man roster comes along and you do the roster cuts. You're going to need camp bodies. But, I think if they were to go out and get Rashard Robinson, 25-year-old, 6'2" corner that played for the 49ers and Jets, who was just reinstated by the NFL, I would definitely not mind that. And I don't think that would actually hit their compensatory pick formula at all. Because they did actually make a move on the defensive line, acquiring A'Shawn Robinson, somebody who had pretty much an elite season in 2018 and fell off in 2019. They signed him to a 2-year deal. My thing with A'Shawn Robinson is he instantly replaces Brockers. And if he plays like he did in 2018, he is a monster addition. But he also nullifies what they got initially by letting Brockers move on to the Ravens. So they will only get 2 compensatory picks the way it's looking. 4th rounder projected for Corey Littleton because he wasn't really paid much, and a 3rd rounder projected for aforementioned Dante Fowler. So it's been kind of a weird off season. And, I think the secondary is probably your best unit or sub-unit on the defense.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more that corner position other than Jalen Ramsey. I think I haven't been as high on Troy Hill as some other people, but I think that, this is his opportunity. So I think that we're going to find out. I will say, this defensive line is a little worrisome. I mean, obviously we have the best defensive tackle in the game in Aaron Donald. Then we're probably most likely going to have Sebastian Joseph Day at nose tackle, and then we'll probably have A'Shawn Robinson on the other end. I am not very confident in that line. I think before last year, you had a guy like Dante Fowler, who, yes, was playing, kind of an edge, but he took a lot of focus off of Aaron Donald. Michael Brockers is another guy that played well alongside Donald. I think I'm kind of worried that this year they're not going to be as strong as they have been. Leonard Floyd, is a guy who was a former first-round pick. He was a monster when he started with the Bears and has regressed since then. So I think the hope with Leonard Floyd is that he's going to kind of revitalize his career on the Rams. However, I'm not super confident that he's a great replacement for Dante Fowler. I don't think that he's going to bring the same energy just based on how he's been playing. But again, new team, new fit, anything could change. So I think it's just going to be, I just still feel like there's a lot of holes on that defensive line and that linebacking core. And Jake, you and I have talked about this, our inside linebacker position is kind of up in the air right now. We've got essentially projected starter Micah Kaiser and Traven Howard. And correct me if I'm wrong, but those are kind of the two guys that based on who we have on the roster right now, are projected to fill that middle linebacker position.
Yes, and the weird thing is, on OurLads.com, a depth chart source for all NFL teams and college football teams, they actually project Leonard Floyd to play the inside linebacker role, and what that would be really interesting, because if they actually did that, that would mean they paid him Corey Littleton type of money to basically put him in a position where he's truly never played before. That would make me angry, to say the least. I look at this inside linebacker spot. I think, Micah Kaiser, Traven Howard, they're higher on. They do like Troy Reeder, somebody that's been on our show, but somebody that played a decent amount of playing time as a UDFA. I know people knock him, but you got production out of a guy that was signed as an undrafted rookie free agent out of Delaware. Normally that doesn't happen, especially on a team that was considered a playoff team coming in the year. So you have him. Bryce Hager's a free agent. We'll see if they actually bring him back. He would probably be the only veteran presence in that room. And then they have Kenny Young, somebody that I really liked when they traded for. He's cheap. He has 2 to 3 years of control on that, that deal. Somebody that's local, so the LA fans know him. He's from UCLA. I like his overall skill set, his versatility. The Ravens kind of soured on him, so they kind of threw him in the deal for Marcus Peters, but I think he could be an interesting option. When I look at this unit, I think the Rams really need to approach the inside linebacker position either in May, when the compensatory formula can't be changed in any way with a signing. Once that deadline comes, going after Patrick Onwuasor, or however you say his name, Onwuasor. He's from the Ravens that I just mentioned. He's a 28-year-old former UDFA. I think he's the best inside linebacker on the market. But if you want to get that done sooner, I think the draft, looking at somebody like Malik Harrison or somebody like Troy Dye might make sense. My biggest issue with the draft is this is a weaker, I don't want to say weaker, but it is very thin, at the inside linebacker spot. So because of that, you're going to have to hit home on a pick in the second, third, or fourth round because those guys are going to be all gone. When a draft is thinner, you're going to have, this is just how it goes, you're going to have a lot of picks. Maybe some of these guys go earlier than they should because now free agency's been picked apart. There's only, 2 guys that I would even consider. And, being that it's a thinner class at the position, you're going to have guys go off the board quicker. So the Rams are going to have to, if they feel they need another inside backer on their roster, I 100% believe that they are going to have to, strike while the iron's hot in the second, third, or fourth round. And even the fourth round might be too late. I did suggest a trade. If they were to trade Brandon Cooks, which it doesn't look like they're going to do, and if they do it, it would be during the draft. I would offer a trade to the Jets. You get a pick and you get Blake Cashman, somebody that's been on our show, but he was my number 1 linebacker last year. I think he could come in and make a huge impact. And with, Avery Williamson and aforementioned CJ Mosley, manning those two inside linebacker spots. He doesn't have an opportunity to be in the starting lineup. Those guys are paid long term as well. So they could end up trading him away if they can't get a deal done with Robbie Anderson and want to go after Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I mean, I think long story short, this defense is just going to look a lot different than it did last season. I don't think as of now, because we obviously have the draft coming up. I mean, free agents can still be signed. Anything can happen. But as of today, it does not look like this defense is going to be nearly as good as it was last season, just based on who's on the roster. Now, like I said, anything can change. Anybody can have an amazing season. Anybody could have a bad season. I think a lot of Rams fans, as this was all unfolding, was like wondering what the heck was going on, as was I. I mean, I didn't expect them to let that many people go. I think for me, the loss of Michael Brockers and Corey Littleton kind of hurt the most. Dante Fowler was somebody who I think is going to produce in Atlanta, and somebody who I thought would produce for us had he stayed on our team. So that was disappointing, but I wasn't that surprised that the Rams let him go. But I think something that I haven't heard talked about by as many people is Samson Ebukam. Because he's a guy who I'm a huge fan of, a guy who I think is super productive and super talented. And a lot of people are kind of wondering what his role is going to be in this defense next season.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is the Rams gave up 2 picks to trade up and get him in the 4th round in their first draft. So I think he's got some sort of, I won't say favoritism, but they definitely like him. He comes from that first draft that McVay ever had. And with a new defensive coordinator, his role will be interesting. Some of these guys, I don't think the Rams would outright cut Corey Littleton or trade him away. But I do think it made it easier for somebody like Brandon Staley to move on with his own guys. And I'm not saying this is correct. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I think it was easier because these guys were already hitting the free agency market. Whereas somebody like Samson Ebukam, I don't think they just they won't just banish. I think he'll get an opportunity to roll with this team. I also like, Ja'Kai Polite, somebody they kind of hooked onto at the last point of the season, put him on the practice squad, and now he got a futures contract, and he's going to be, with the team. And he's somebody I had as a top 3 round pick last year, one of my favorite edge defenders in the draft. You look at, Justin Lawler, somebody they liked a lot, former 7th rounder at SMU. He gets hurt, doesn't come back because they had to place him on IR. He'll get an opportunity to be back and fighting for that. Nitrez Patrick, somebody that really stood out in preseason, made the roster. And of course, he ended up playing a decent amount towards the end of the year. Josh Caraway from TCU, they liked him and what he was doing. He gets hurt in preseason. So he's still on the roster. And of course, Obanai Okoronkwo, I think they like a lot. I think he'll have an opportunity to start. Getting rid of Clay Matthews really opens up the door for multiple things. But first off, I think it really signals that they're going to go after a pass rusher in the draft. I think that the Rams are 100% going to draft a pass rusher early on. And I think if they go that route in the 2nd round at 52, I think their best option could be Joshua Uche, somebody I've brought up multiple times on this show. Joshua Uche out of Michigan, very talented player, not only great off the edge, has great bend. He's got, great agility. He's obviously an athlete, but he's got great range and can really cover down the field. So you can kind of use him all over the field as an inside backer, an outside backer. I think he brings some vibrant versatility that could really help this defense. But I definitely think, that like cutting Clay Matthews really signaled to me they're going to add another guy to the building, and he's going to be a top heavy guy. They're going to get a 2nd or 3rd rounder on an edge defender. And then I think maybe they'll look at somebody like Cameron Wake getting a veteran presence, after the fact. But I don't think that they're going to do anything that will mess with their, compensatory formula. I think that would be against their overall plan. But the second thing that comes out of the Clay Matthews, release is that it gives these younger guys an opportunity to really fight for everything, every, snap that they want to, receive. And I think right now you're looking at Ibukam, you're looking at Leonard Floyd and Obanat Okoronkwo as kind of the guys at the forefront of it. So we'll see. But I think it's definitely a huge opportunity. Plus, with a new defensive coordinator, there could be some clean slates that are given on the roster, despite the fact most of the position coach stayed in line.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely see. And I think that a lot of people, at least from our Instagram comments, just kind of want to know overall, before we move on to the offense, what our take is on the Rams offseason defensively is. And just speaking honestly and my perception of things and how I felt about it, I thought it has been garbage. I don't really agree with letting certain guys go, as I know that you don't, maybe not as much as me. I think, I have to assume that there's some greater play going on, but I think it's inexcusable that we let that many guys go, especially when we are low on draft picks. So to answer everybody's question about what I think of the Rams offseason so far, at least defensively, I'm not a fan, but I have to hope that there's a greater plan for the greater good going on and that it's going to work out. But I just think, we lost a lot of talent. And now we just have to hope that guys step up or, we draft the right guys or something else in free agency works out. But Jake, what are your thoughts overall on the Rams offseason for the defense so far?
Yeah, I think that they sold out to stop the run. I think they made that kind of their mission, going out and grabbing Ashawn Robinson, a premier run stuffer. They also went out and got Leonard Floyd, which, I obviously I think he's a talent, but I don't know how much better he is than what they had. I think they could have afforded Dante Fowler since they paid, close, it's going to be upwards $13 million for Floyd. Floyd is not really much of a pass rusher. He's more of a run defender. So that's kind of where I'm seeing that. My biggest problem with the Leonard Floyd deal is it's a 1-year deal. So this is a team that continues to put themselves in harm's way. And, kind of instead of just fixing the issue, they don't want to fix the issue. They just want to put a Band-Aid over it with these 1-year deals. I think it absolutely has come back to bite them multiple times because you're, basically prolonging the time to pay these guys or just let them go. And I think you saw that with Dante Fowler last year. If they get, 4-year deal done and they offer him, $14 million instead of trying to, or not 14 million, but like maybe 16 or 17 million instead of, staying at 14 million, they wouldn't have to worry about losing Fowler this year. And I think the more you prolong that and you keep the Band-Aid on, I mean, it's only going to hurt you in the long run because what did that do? Well, this year now they had to make tough decisions and they had to let Fowler go. And that, got in the way of even, doing negotiations with other guys. So I'm not really a fan of the 1-year deals, like, at all. I wish they would frankly stop doing that. I like that Ashawn Robinson's a 2-year deal, but even then I kind of feel like they dropped the ball on that one. Getting a potential elite defensive lineman if he plays like he did in 2018, if you sign him to a 4-year deal at that price, that is an absolute steal. Instead, they signed to a 2-year deal, which is better than the 1. I just can't for the life of me understand signing these guys to 1-year deals, especially somebody like Dante Fowler, who's 25 years old.
Yeah, I don't either. I think we'll see. I mean, that's the beauty of it being March 22nd as we speak right now. This will be released in a couple days. But, moving on to the offense, I think the obvious loss is Todd Gurley. That is a move that, quite frankly, I am not a fan of. I know that Rams fans are very divided about this, just judging from the comments we've gotten on social media. Todd, the reason I can imagine, I mean, there's a couple different things going on, but the big reason that this became an issue is because he signed a fat contract. We owed him a lot of money. We signed him to a big deal, and things didn't really quite work out health-wise for him. And another reason that this is so frustrating is because I don't think that the Rams front office was also necessarily transparent about how bad his injury was. I mean, there was a lot of questions last season about why McVay was not using Gurley. I mean, Gurley was hardly utilized at all last season. And we can only assume that that's because of his health. But I mean, I'm just not a fan of, this is a guy who gave this organization so much, and he was still producing. And I don't care what anybody says. I mean, when he was in the game, he was effective. When he was being used, he was effective. I mean, you look at the numbers. I mean, you just had to use the guy. For whatever reason, we weren't using him, and we might not ever know why. But, I have to believe that we were able to find a trade partner for Todd Gurley. I mean, there's no way that nobody's at least giving us a 6th round pick for Todd Gurley. So the fact that he ended up being released, I just wasn't a fan of it. And I know that people are going to tweet me and Instagram me all these excuses as to why it's justified, but I'm sorry. I don't like the way that went down. I don't think Todd did either. I think I see him joking on social media, but I imagine that he's pissed, as he should be. I think he deserved better. If there is an issue going on with his knee, we don't know, because no one has been super transparent about that. I mean, all that we heard last season was that his knee was fine. That's what they kept telling everybody. He's fine, he's fine, he's fine. They didn't use him. They never told us why. It doesn't matter, but I'm not a fan of this. I don't think, I mean, I know that you really love Henderson. I love Henderson as well. I don't care what anybody says, though. I don't think that he's going to be anywhere close to Todd Gurley, like peak Todd Gurley performance. So maybe Todd was never going to get back to that space, but I just think that it's really unfortunate that was the way that his career as a Ram had to end. But I am happy that he got to go to Atlanta, because Georgia, really loves Georgia, and Georgia loves him. I mean, that's obviously where he played football. He has a lot of friends there. He's excited to be going back, and I think that he's really going to be productive for them. I actually think he's going to go to Atlanta, and I think he's going to kill it next season. So, that kind of sucks for us. But, I mean, Jake, what was your thoughts on how the Todd Gurley release went down?
I think it was one of the biggest failures of the McVay-Snead era, to put it as blunt as I can. I thought it was absolutely pathetic. I really do. And it may not have looked as bad if we didn't just see what, David Johnson, or rather the carcass of David Johnson, was able to acquire, in return for him, what the Cardinals were able to do. The Cardinals got so good just off that trade. They got David Johnson off their books, and then they were able to acquire the best, one of the best receivers in the league, in DeAndre Hopkins. The Rams, what did they get in return for having an elite running back who is kind of fallen off in a sense, and it's really only been 1 year? Oh, nothing. That's right. First off, the Todd Gurley pick, when they picked him, didn't really make much sense, because they had Trey Mason and they had Zach Stacy. So, I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously it ended up working out well. But I wasn't a huge fan of drafting a guy off a torn ACL 10th overall. That kind of, slowly but surely after he was drafted, I got into it and all that. But I was not a fan of picking a running back that high. Now he ends up, dominating, or, coming close to that his rookie year. Over 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, really wasn't much of a receiving threat. And then things changed, where they started using him in the passing game. They had a bad year in 2016. McVay came in. They started using him in the passing game. He had 788 yards in 2017. He basically helped Jared Goff kind of guide him. He was the engine of the offense. This is somebody that had 58 touchdowns in 5 years, but even more so, what he was able to do, well, just running the ball, because he had 12 other touchdowns, receiving. So that's 70 total touchdowns in 5 years. Here's the list of guys that have had, between 2017 and 2018. Here's a list of guys that have had 40 touchdowns. Todd Gurley, that's it. So did he fall off? And yes, does he maybe have a knee issue? He probably does have a knee issue. But I think we're so quick to be like, well, it's not the same Todd Gurley. Okay, well, this not the same Todd Gurley is still good enough to run over 1,000 yards and rush for 7 touchdowns. Actually, in this case, he's good enough to run for 12 touchdowns. He's good enough to actually carry your red zone offense, which is been inefficient going back to McVay's days with the Redskins. So Todd was used in more ways than people think, and that could come back to hurt the Rams. Darrell Henderson is my number one running back last year. I don't see him as somebody that's going to be Todd Gurley in the way he was in the red zone. I just don't think they're not guys that are that decisive in running at the goal line. And he was big in that department. I think that's something that's going to be forgotten. Also, something that's going to be forgotten is how he used to bail out Jared Goff and just stay there in the backfield. And then if Jared Goff panicked, he could just kind of dump it off to Todd, and Todd could do the rest. Now, I get last year he fell off, but don't you remember when Adrian Peterson tore his ACL, came back, and almost broke the rushing record? I would not be shocked if we see some sort of crazy resurgence, air quotes needed, out of Todd Gurley. I don't know how you go from seeing an offensive player of the year guy and seeing what he was able to do in 2017 and 18 and being, I wouldn't even say arguably, he was the best running back in that time. And you're that quick to turn on him. Not just the fans, but I mean, and not all fans turn on him, so I'm not generalizing that. But I mean the front office. And this is a front office that continues to turn on these guys. I know it's, we can use it's just a business all we want, but how is the next guy going to feel when he goes to sign with Los Angeles? Like, I wouldn't personally, for me, if I'm a free agent and I'm seeing how they've, ditched Todd Gurley like that, and they're talking about trading this guy, and oh, by the way, Marcus Peters, who was basically their starting cornerback before they even acquired Jalen Ramsey, they just basically outed week 4 of the season. They sent him away. I just don't see how, there's not guys that are really, how should I say this? I guess untouchable besides maybe Aaron Donald. But even then, I still wonder, what could happen. I just don't think they did this the right way. I think they made it extremely ugly. I think they weren't truthful. I don't think that they said anything that could let anybody know. And maybe that was for the benefit of Todd Gurley. But then all of a sudden you have Colin Cowherd going on his show, The Herd, and coming out and saying how he has these sources saying that Todd was basically this bad locker room guy and how he changed after the money, kind of painting him like an AB, which I didn't like. So that means somebody along the lines leaked that, because Colin doesn't just make stuff up like that. I mean, he's legitimately told. I'm not saying even his source is right, but the fact that was leaked is another issue of mine. But what you have in this guy, and to not acquire, I mean, he had over 5,000 yards rushing and over 2,000 yards receiving. I mean, he finishes with 70 touchdowns. He finishes with 5.1 yards per touch. On 1,483 touches, 7,494 total yards. I mean, you let this guy walk for nothing because he wasn't the same as last year. Not the same as last year, and he still had 857 yards rushing and 207 yards receiving, which would still put him over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, which he did every single year, even in his 2 off years. So I think they totally messed this up. I'm not going to hold back in saying that. I've said that over and over again. And I think that what they're probably going to do is they're probably going to copy Kyle Shanahan, and they're probably going to go with a running back by committee approach like he used with guys like Mostert and guys like Breida and Coleman. And I don't even think that's the wrong approach. I just think to not get anything for Todd Gurley is my biggest hang up here. Even if you don't want him on your team, to not get anything for him is just a total disservice. I think you totally wasted your investment. And not only that, we're not even talking about, I haven't even gotten to the point where they're basically eating up $20 million to basically say, we don't want you on our team, and we're going to take a $20 million penalty just to make sure you're not on our team anymore. How do you think Todd Gurley feels about that after what he gave to this team and how he was basically the engine of the offense? I think it's a total disservice to him, and I think it's a disservice to the fans. And I think everybody that, is upset and is being told not to be upset, and this guy, didn't care and he stopped carrying all this, and, people that are so reliant on what the media is putting out there without actually knowing the facts, I think those people should be allowed to say whatever they want. It's a tough time right now to be a Rams fan. Nothing is guaranteed. And all of a sudden, it's crazy, but you get this new system, not this new system, you get this new stadium coming in, you have these new uniforms, this new logo and everything, and slowly but surely we're starting to see these fan favorites just disappear, like Brockers and Littleton and Gurley, and it's like, maybe that's not the best idea to gain fans or bring them into the stadium. Just thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and people aren't going to like that I'm saying this, but I don't think Todd Gurley's too mad to be leaving. I think if, not only what he's portrayed on social media, and obviously he's excited to go to the Falcons, which I'm super happy for, and I don't blame him for, but the way that he, quite frankly, was disrespected, in my opinion, the way that it went down in his departure from the Rams, to me, was very disrespectful. And I think that like you said, I think it's a very bad look. I think unfortunately we're starting to see this kind of trend with the Rams, these 1-year deals, not keeping around guys for long. It's not a good look. It's not a good game plan. And you're going to start to see guys like Aaron Donald was not happy on social media. And I'll tell you what, if Aaron Donald starts to get fed up and he wants out, then we're going to have a big problem. I mean, you basically let half of his supporting cast walk. And quite frankly, it seemed like none of them really wanted to stay, because from what you and I know, some of those guys reportedly were offered kind of what they took somewhere else, and they still didn't want to go back to the Rams. So everyone can debate why that is. We all have our theories. I think at the end of the day, the Todd Gurley situation is really, like I said, I think it was disrespectful. I think he is very excited to be an Atlanta Falcon, and I'm happy for him. If the Rams didn't want him, whoever does is a very smart football team, and I honestly think that he's going to produce next season, and I think he's going to be on a good team to do that with a lot of experienced guys like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. So we'll have to see. I mean, if Todd Gurley goes out next season and scores 20 touchdowns, I mean, I think it, that's what I think is, I don't know if 20 is the right number. That might be dramatic, but I think he's going to go, and I think he's going to ball out next season. And I hope he does, because I'm always going to be a Todd Gurley fan. And I don't really believe any of these reports about his locker room demeanor, because anybody who really knows Todd and has seen anything with Todd, or knows people who know Todd, knows that he's an awesome, upstanding guy who's a team player. I mean, how many games did we watch when he could have gone in for the touchdown and didn't? He went out at the 1 yard line, or he went out at the 3 yard line to run the clock and win the game and all of that. I mean, it is what it is. I think it's really unfortunate. And if you're in the camp of good riddance by Todd Gurley, then that's your opinion. And you have a right to your opinion. But, I think, Jake, we are at kind of a interesting off-season time, because most of the big free agents are gone. So we are going to kind of have to wait to see how the rest of free agency plays out. But what's interesting is, at the time that we are recording this podcast, the new logo and jersey has not dropped. But this episode is going to be dropping a day after it drops, I believe. So what do you think is going to be the reaction? Because there's a lot of rumors going around about this logo and this jersey, and you and I, at the time of this recording, have no idea what it's going to be or what to expect.
Yeah, I think it will be okay. I can't guarantee it's going to be better than okay. Just seeing that logo and all the confirmation that that's going to be an official logo, when it didn't look like it was done by somebody that should have been paid to do that, I don't know. It kind of got me souring on it. I also don't really care. I think what it comes down to is, when the Rams were a Super Bowl contender, this stuff was cool. But right now, I don't care. I mean, I think I care way more about the personnel that they're putting in their building, and, how they're going to, get back to that. Because right now, what they're starting to look like is a cautionary tale. They're starting to look like, the 30 for 30, the dynasty that never was. They're starting to look eerily similar to the greatest show on turf, and how they basically just evaporated in just such a short amount of time right after losing to none other than the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. So that's what I'm worried about right now. I think it looks like they're going to keep their colors for the most part, the yellow and blue, the ones that we want anyway. The navy, I'm not a huge fan of. I'd rather have the royal. But I'm not going to go and complain about all of that. I used to care, but after seeing this offseason, I need to see the Rams really reach and, they need to hit it home in this draft. They can't slouch on this draft at all. When you pay somebody like Jared Goff and you actually do make that investment in a franchise quarterback, when you also have another franchise quarterback type of contract or close to it in Aaron Donald, you're really capturing yourself. Whether it's right or wrong, you're really capturing yourself. So what do you do in that sense? Well, you have to go and find cheap talent. How do you do that? Through the draft. Unfortunately for the Rams, that has kind of backfired because they paid Jared Goff, they paid Aaron Donald, they paid Todd Gurley, Cooks, you name it, but they kept trading away draft picks. And the crazy thing is they weren't even signing these guys. They were trading for every one of them. Fowler, Talib, Peters, all those guys, Sammy Watkins. That causes an enormous strain on your capital. And when you let go of all those picks, those are more picks that you are not getting. Other teams are. So keep that in mind as you try to build a team, while already paying, over $60 million on two players a year. It's going to, I'd say closer to 70 million. It's going to cap string you, and you are going to have to hit home on these draft picks. And once again, they don't have a first rounder. With the trade for Darius Slay, the Eagles made a third and a fifth, makes you wonder if once again Les Snead overpaid for Jalen Ramsey. So things look good when you're winning, but when things, you're not winning, things start to get I won't even say overanalyzed, but they get put under a microscope, and, rightfully so. I think a lot of these moves, if you go back and look at them, I think they were desperation. I think we liked it at the time, but in reality, I think Les Snead has kind of that, he's kind of like riding the lightning type of guy where he'll go out and make that crazy move. But, if you're looking at the overall the repercussions of it, they don't always benefit you. And I think, when you look at something like, say, the Sammy Watkins deal, I mean, look at the facts. They traded a second-round pick, a valuable second-round pick, for Sammy Watkins, somebody they didn't even plan on really re-signing. They didn't even tag him. They tagged LaMarcus Joyner. I mean, just think about that. So I know they went out and got Brandon Cooks, but once again, they gave up a first-round pick. That's more draft capital. All of a sudden, you look, and they gave up a first and a second-rounder to basically add a third really good receiver to the roster that they didn't really need because they spent a fourth rounder on Josh Reynolds. So again, I'm not saying Cooks is not a good player. Cooks is awesome, but I mean, the Rams have done a lot of this by pure luxury. The Aaron Donald draft pick was a luxury pick. They didn't actually need a defensive lineman, but thank God they went out and they grabbed the best player available. That is exactly why they will have to do that in this upcoming draft. Unless it's a quarterback, since you already, basically sold the farm for Jared Goff, you can't afford to draft a quarterback, 52nd overall. But best defensive lineman available, best edge available. You have to go out and make that move. Do not reach on players. This is the time. The Rams they've put themselves in a little bit of a hole here. They can get out of it, but they need to draft efficiently, and they really need to knock it out of the park. Because if they don't hit on this draft, it's going to put them behind. They need to find guys not only for the future, but they need to find guys that can play right away. Because this is not a team that is going to be playoff contenders the way it is right now. I think they can be competitive. I think they can be Jeff Fisher type of football that kind of gives you a 7-9, 8-8 appeal at best. But in order to get that 10 or 11 win, plateau that we're kind of used to seeing, they're going to have to really strike home on this draft class, and they have to grab players that can play immediately. That's the problem, and that's what they've put themselves into.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I just think in closing, we have to nail the draft, and you and I will be talking about that, in episodes to come. And we've interviewed a lot of really great draft prospects, and there's a lot more out there that the Rams need to keep an eye on. So hopefully the Rams can kind of clean up their mess in the draft, because the offseason so far has not gone well at all. But yeah, I think, we pretty much hopefully answered everybody's questions about the offseason. For the record, my prediction for the jersey logo reveal is, I think the colors are going to be navy and yellow. I think kind of like University of Michigan type. color scheme. So that's my prediction. I think it's going to be the navy with the bright yellow. I could be wrong. We'll find out. They drop tomorrow. But yeah, hopefully this off-season mess can be cleaned up quick.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there, and I do agree with you. I think that's going to be the look. I think it's going to be more modern. Maybe they get rid of the horns on the sleeves. They're not going to get rid of the horns on the helmet, but I'd like personally if they just went with the yellow and blue and they kept the ram head. I don't know why everyone hates the ram head. I mean, I know it's St. Louis, and maybe that's why for some of the LA fans, but I mean, the same could be said, when St. Louis kind of had those, the horns, you know what I mean? I mean, it's Rams, at the end of the day, these are the Rams. So, not the LA Rams, not the St. Louis Rams, they're the Rams. I mean, when you look throughout history, they've been in St. Louis, they've been in Cleveland, they've been in Los Angeles. There are still Rams fans in Cleveland, but more importantly, there are Rams fans everywhere. So at the end of the day, I don't think that this look should be appealing to just a set audience. I don't think it should just be just an LA thing or a St. Louis thing or a Cleveland thing. But I think it should be about anyone that, enjoys the Rams and roots for this organization, roots for this franchise. So that's kind of like my closing statement there. They're going to keep the horns. I think they go with the yellow and blue. I don't think St. Louis fans would mind the yellow and blue since, well, they wore the yellow and blue in St. Louis. They wore it when they won the Super Bowl. So I think that definitely would be cool. I think going with a blue and white would be confusing because the Colts are already blue and white. To me, if I was running an organization, I would want my team to have some originality. And I think by going back to the fearsome foursome colors because it looked better on TV, doing that in 2020 makes literally no sense at all. And no disrespect to the fearsome foursome fans and the fearsome foursome Rams, but I mean, that's just kind of my opinion. But yeah, I think they'll go with the yellow and blue and, whatever it is, I don't think it's going to be horrible. I guess we'll just have to see for ourselves. The uniforms won't be announced for a bit. It's just going to be the logos and colors. So I think we both have the same idea, but I guess we'll have to find out when the time comes. But that's going to do it for the Downtown Rams podcast. It is episode 285. We are 15 away from the 300, so Alexis and I will have to figure out what the hell we're going to do to commemorate that because it's been kind of a long journey here for DTR. But once again, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Alexis at the Alexis Craft. You can follow me at JK Bogan DTR on Twitter. You can follow Downtown Rams at Downtown Rams. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Be sure to check those out. And everyone stay safe.